Everybody wants peace of mind, and atoms also want just that. They always want their peace of mind by being stable. When atoms are not stable, they tend to find it so difficult and restless. So sometimes for atoms to become stable, they need to gain electrons. So as some are losing, others are gaining the electrons that are being lost. So when an atom gains two or more electrons, it forms what we refer to as an anion. So an anion is a negatively charged ion that is formed when an atom gains one or more electrons. So that is how to be discussing in this lesson. So we'll be picking selected examples to lay the foundation of how to write anions of the first 20 elements. So we'll be using chlorine and oxygen. Let's start with chlorine. This is a chlorine atom. It has an atomic number of 17, meaning it has 17 protons. But this chlorine atom is neutral. Since it is neutral, it means the number of electrons are also 17. But here's the catch. The electrons are negative, so it gives us a net charge of 0. Positive 17 minus 17 gives us 0. That makes chlorine atom neutral. This chlorine atom. Now, what is the electronic configuration of chlorine? That is 287. 287. Meanwhile, you remember that for chlorine, for the chlorine atom to be stable, its final shell or valence shell needs to have 8 electrons in total to be considered stable. But here's the case, it has 7. It needs one more to be stable. So what will chlorine do? Chlorine cannot just dump all the 7 electrons away, but rather it will look for an atom that is willing to donate its electron, or an atom that is willing to give out its electron. Then it will grab that lost electron and attach it to itself to become stable. So this is what actually happens. It will then grab someone's lost electron, attach it to itself to become what? Stable. So after it has gained that electron, the number of protons has actually not changed. The protons will still be 17, but the electrons will now move from 17 to negative 18. So we now have plus 17 protons and minus 18 electrons. So the net charge of this atom will now be negative 1. Why? Because plus 17 minus 18 gives us negative 1, meaning there are more negatives than positives in this atom. The black dot represents the borrowed electron. Let me put it that way. So as a result, this chlorine atom now becomes negatively charged. In terms of equation, it can be written as the chlorine atom has gained one more electron, that is the plus 1 electron, going into chlorine ion. Well, this is clear and simple. Let's look at our last example, that is using oxygen. This oxygen atom has an atomic number of 8, meaning there are 8 protons and 8 electrons. Why 8 electrons? Because this atom is neutral, so the net charge will be 0. The electronic configuration of oxygen is 2, 6. 2 plus 6 gives us 8. So the first shell can take a maximum of 2, and the third shell can take a maximum of 8. But for oxygen, it has limited electrons, so the second shell has only 6 electrons. But oxygen wants to be stable, so the 6 electrons are not enough to attain stability. So what will it do? It will borrow 2 electrons and attach it and add it to itself, so that it will end up having 8 electrons in its outermost shell. I think that is clear enough. So now the electronic configuration of oxygen will now become 2, 8. Mind you, 2 of the electrons were actually borrowed. So now, after it has gained 2 electrons, the proton number has actually not changed. The proton number will still be 8, but the number of electrons will now increase from 8 to 10 because 2 more electrons have been added. and this is going to affect the net charge. Positive 8 minus 10 will give us negative 10. So that ends up being the charge of the oxygen atom. That is anion. In terms of equation, that is oxygen plus 2 of electrons giving us the oxygen ion. So the negative 2 on top of the oxygen tells us that it has gained 2 extra electrons. But here's a thought-provoking question. Where do those 2 electrons come from? And for cations that we discussed in our previous lesson, where do those 2 electrons go? Well, I would like to hear your thoughts on this question in the comment section. If you find this lesson interesting and helpful, leave a comment in the comment section, and also share the link of this video with other students and tell somebody about Learner's Aid. See you in our next lesson.